Hey, I'm Nick. Today we're going to be using an interactive tool because I know in a lot of sessions like this, people don't want to speak up, but we need feedback so that we know what everybody's thinking. So, unlike most corporate meetings, I'm going to invite you to take out your cell phones and you can either scan that barcode that is there or go to menti.com in your browser and then type in that code 77303769. We'll give you a second or two to do that. And for those of you who've never used this kind of technology before, I think it's a lot of fun. You'll be answering some of our questions as we go along today, and everything is anonymous. So feel free to answer freely. All right. So I'm going to start off with this assumption that we all, at some level, plan group travel. Okay. I want you to think about all of the tools that you're currently using and how many of you are using more than five tools right now. Now, normally we'd be in a hall where we can see everybody's hands go up. I want you just to put that number in your head. All right. So if you said more than five different tools, congratulations, you're in the right place. You're very normal. Okay. And if your hand isn't up yet, don't worry. We're going to see if we can't get you there in just a couple of minutes. Now, before I go any further, I should probably explain to you what I mean by different tools. I mean everything that it takes to run a group travel. Okay. So spreadsheets, software platforms, inboxes, document creation tools, shared drives, customer management systems, graphic tools like Canva, itinerary builders, forms, paper checklists. And maybe if you're in a larger office, maybe that one person down the hall who just seems to have everything in their head. Okay. So you can see it's a lot of tools that we all use to piece together travel. So if you were a minute ago just only counting and you're like, I use two or three, now I want you to think, oh, yeah, I use that Google Doc, I use that spreadsheet. Oh, and I always refer to that one person for that information. If that's you now, now you're really in the right room. So let's make this official. Grab your phone. Here's the question again. Okay. When we say tools, how many of you tools are you using to manage more than one trip? We got three of you saying more than five. Awesome. Yeah, see, that tracks. That's exactly what I expect to see here. So I'm going to slow down for just a moment because this next point I think is really important. You may see those numbers of more than five, and you might think to yourself, I'm just really disorganized. That's not today's point. That's not the reason that we're here. You are not behind. You are not messy. You are not bad at your job. You are doing what almost every educational, nonprofit, and institutional travel company does. You solve problems in real time as they show up. You added tools as you needed them. But over time, those tools started solving fewer problems than they created. So today is not about shaming your system, and it is not about ranking software. And it's definitely not about telling you that you're doing something wrong. Today is just about getting clarity. All right. So here's what I'm going to promise in the next hour, what you're going to end up leaving with. You're going to leave with a clear inventory of what's actually in your tech stack. All of those tools, we're going to take a clear inventory. Then we're going to look for red flags that quietly create risk and burnout. Then we're going to identify your top three fixes, not all of them, just three. And then I'm going to help you come up with a 30-day action plan that you can execute to really kind of hone down so that you really use the tools that you have to the best ability. And best of all, there's no software purchase required. We're going to work with what you got. All right. So to make sure that this isn't just theory, I'm here with somebody who uses YouLi every single day, and that is Brad. Brad gets to see YouLi from the tech side, so he talks to a lot of folks just like you who are planning trips. So I'm going to turn this over to Brad and let him take this next piece and tell you what a Frankenstack actually is.
Cool. Thank you, Nick. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. And so, yeah, as you can tell from Nick's introduction, this really what you're going to get out of this is your own work. So we hope that that you'll be, participating on your end and doing the work to get the value out of it. So what do we mean when we say Frankenstack? Well, here's a visual and a little a little descriptive description of it, but let's define it. First off, it's a patchwork of systems. Visually, as we've demonstrated here, it's a little ugly. So let's be honest, we're not going to win any beauty contest with our tech stack here. However, it may kind of work, or you may actually think, yeah, it works, right? Until you scale or experience staff turnover or hit a crisis. So it's fragile. That's the way I like to think about it, right? It's a patchwork of tools that's disconnected, relies a lot on manual entry or manual manipulation, I guess I would say, which you've stitched together as you've added these new pieces. So as a new need comes up, you've slapped on a new solution. And don't be ashamed. That's a common reaction, right? We have a need. We're like, we need a we need an email solution, so we slap on MailChimp, or we need a reporting tool, so we slap on a reporting tool. That is really, really common. Can you jump to the next slide there, Nick, if you didn't already? Awesome. So this combination of tools, it was likely built out of necessity. Like I said, you've got a need and you threw it on there, but it's likely costing you time, money, and sanity now. So don't worry, you're not alone. And it's not too late to start making improvements. So I won't make us all say it aloud together, but maybe even write it down or say it to yourself. It's really not too late to start making changes and improvements. So what I'd like you to do next is take a minute to think about what makes up your Frankenstack. And Nick had you thinking about the numbers of tools. And I want you to start taking a few minutes to share what tools you and your team actually use on a weekly basis. So we're going to jump over here to Minty again. And don't worry about the entire monster. Just think about, the pieces you're most familiar with or what comes to mind. So jump on there and share some of the tools that you and your team use on a weekly basis within your organization. And we'll give a moment here for some answers. Nice. YouLi. Zapier, great. Some automations happening. I like that. It's a great tool. Slack. Yeah. Could be as simple as, yep. Tour tools could be as simple as like emails, how your OneDrive, very common one. Yep. HubSpot. Nice. We'll keep them coming for another minute because this is where it's nice. I think you also kind of learn from each other sometimes of like, oh yeah, I forgot about, Word or Google Suite or, Dropbox where you're dropping your files. So give you another couple seconds here to keep dropping in some answers. Love to see what we're seeing here. Very, very common stuff. Yeah. Canva. Nice. And just think about this from your role in many businesses, you may not even know all the tools your team uses, but you can already begin to see it's a real mix match of various resources, right? Just from this sample here. And there's plenty of things that we haven't really gotten into with this list, right? So not sure. Well, there's QuickBooks. I was going to say, I'm not sure I've seen an accounting one, but there, boom, it popped up. That's great. Or if there's any form submissions that people are using, whether it's, Jotform or Google Sheets or Google Forms, things like that. WhatsApp, nice. Yep. So you can imagine there's also these tools that not necessarily all your colleagues share. Hey, I use this, but they're out there. There's a lot of them. You can really start to see the various resource. This is a great kind of, I love that it's still going. I love it. This is great that it's growing. I'm going to pass it back to Nick. He's going to talk about a little bit about the program life cycle, and then we're going to come back to some tools here.
All right. So before we start talking about fixing any tools or reducing tools or taming anything, let's rewind and actually talk about the travel program life cycle. All right. Because most of the pain of what you're feeling has nothing to do with the tools that you're using. It has to do where your tools show up in the life of the program. So this is a simplified version of the travel program lifestyle brochure version, not operational. Okay. Very, very simple. So interest, customer expresses interest. Then there's an inquiry. then there's registration, and then they make payments, and then there's going to be forms and waivers that they need to fill out, and then traveler communication back and forth. Maybe there's some operations handoff, and then there's the actual travel when they go travel, and then there's some post travel. And there's probably a few extra steps in there, but this is just high level. All right. So nothing on this slide should be really surprising. But what is surprising is how rarely we see the whole thing just laid out at once. Because some of us are responsible for everything on this list, and some of us are just responsible for little specific pieces of it. All right. Most programs don't actually manage a system, they manage moments. They manage moments. So when someone emails with a question, you're managing a moment. When a payment fails, you're managing a moment. When a medical form is missing, when a vendor needs a rooming list, when someone says, "Hey, where do we keep that?" All right. And we respond the way that humans always do. We patch the moment. We add a form, we add a spreadsheet, we create a workaround, we add a tool. All right. And none of those choices are wrong in their isolation, but the problem always shows up in the handoffs. What do I mean by that? The handoffs are every place the flow changes hands. So, from interest to inquiry, from registrations to payment, from forms over to operations. That's where the friction always shows up. And that's where things like data gets re entered, context gets lost. People end up filling out the same thing twice or more, and usually one person winds up holding the whole thing together with experience, memory, and a lot of mental effort. All right. So let's get practical for a moment. You're going to see a question up on the screen. Okay. Where does your workflow currently break down? And here's what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. We are not going to fix your tech today. We're not going to try to standardize so that everybody's using the exact same tools or doing it on the same system. And we're definitely not rebuilding your entire stack. What we are going to do is identify where your workflow is actually breaking down. And then we're going to look at which parts of your Frankenstack are actually under the most strain. And that's it. So we're going to get some clarity first and then some decisions second. Because once you know where the friction lies, you can stop blaming yourself for problems that were never personal in the first place. Brad, why don't you tell us about the parts of the Frankenstack monster?
Absolutely. Thanks, Nick. All right. So here we've got a visual on the screen. You may also recognize it as similar to the worksheet that I sent out earlier. Hopefully you have that available either digitally or even on a printout version where you can get to work on that. But before we jump into it, I wanted to start by going through and describing your monster. So we're going to talk about the different parts of the monster and how these tools are categorized together. So we're just going to go head to toe, no other particular order. So inside our head, we have our brain. The brain is our traveler data or traveler profile data. So think about all the information you've collected on your travelers, their name, contact information, dietary preferences, passports, flight information, names of others in their party, time they arrive and depart. The list goes on and on and on. And that's all sitting up in our brain. And I want you to think about the tools. You don't have to do anything with it now. Just start kind of, making yourself familiar with breaking it down in this way. Think about the tools where the information lives. Where is that type of information stored in your workplace? Next, we move on down. We've got our eyes. I want you to think of the eyes as your report function. So, any tools used to provide a summary of information that you need to see in an organized manner. So, for example, this could be a transfer list, room assignments, a financial report. So, anytime you need to pull pieces of data and have it in an organized manner, that's going to be the eyes. Below the eyes, we've got our mouth. This is our communication tools, right? How are we communicating? And not only with our travelers, also with our vendors, our internal staff, our external collaborators, such as teachers, chaperones, trip organizers, anything like that, or even your board, your supervisors. They are within your organization. Not always the same tool that you're communicating with, depending on your audience. So think about your communication tools there. Moving on down, we've got our arms and our hands. This is how we're reaching out and capturing that information. So think PDF forms, scanned forms, emails, electronic forms such as Google Forms or Jot Form, maybe by phone or maybe even in person, depending on your organization. So those are all the different ways we're reaching out and capturing that information with our arms and hands. Moving on down, we got our gut. We're going to check in with our gut. Always good to check in with your gut. Our stomach is where our payments and accounting tools live. No one wants an upset stomach with payments and accounting tools. So think about the tools you use to collect payments, invoice vendor, track trip income and expenses, and even monitor your overall business and financial health. So, what tools do you use to collect and hold that data within your organization? Moving on down a couple more zones of the body here. We've got our legs, which represent our operations. This has got our monster moving. These are the tools we use to plan, facilitate, and conclude the trip or our travel experiences. So this may include tools for staffing, allocating staff responsibilities, booking logistics, such as transfers or flights, building and updating the itineraries, or contacting vendors, just to name a few. We all know there's many layers to operations, so there could just be a lot inside those legs there that keeps the operations moving. Lastly, we've got our feet. These are the tools that are used for handing off information or kicking off information, since they're our feet, kicking off information to our vendors. So this may be as simple as handing a piece of paper with a roster of a bus list for a bus transfer to a driver, or providing a tour operator with all pertinent data you have collected on the travelers, such as dietary information, health and emergency information, anything you've captured that now needs to be shared with that operator who's going to be taking your group out. So that's the feet is where we're taking it all and kicking it off to somebody else. So you may now, with thinking about all those descriptives, and I know it's a lot of talking, but you may now be getting a sense for how that basic monster on your screen now easily transforms into that Frankenstack monster on my slide earlier with all the different tools represented. So when we start thinking about all these different functions, there's a ton of tools within our organization that we're utilizing to keep our monster moving and keep our monster operating that makes up our monster. Are there any questions? And we're not going to dive into details yet as far as the makeup, but are there any questions just on the part of the monster or parts of the monster before we move on? So, Nick, back to you.
Cool. So Brad's sent out a worksheet for you guys. And if you happen to have it there, grab a pencil and come play along with us. So what we're going to do is we're going to take some inventory. We've got this bag of bones in front of us right now. Let's actually do some inventory because you've probably never thought about which tools do what exactly and how they all fit together. So just to be clear, nobody's going to be grading this. Nobody's collecting the information. This is just for you by yourself. Nobody's going to ask what tools you're using. So let's begin. Let's take a look at this. So once again, Brad passed out that worksheet. On that worksheet in front of you, you're going to see the same categories that we just walked through: payments, data, forms, communications, operation, reporting. I want you to do three things. And I promise this is going to it'll be a lot more useful if you don't overthink it. All right. So, prompt number one. Okay. First, I want you to write down which tools you actually use for each category. Not what you meant to use, not what the policy says that you should use, but what actually happens on a Wednesday afternoon. So, if the honest answer is we use three spreadsheets in an inbox, go ahead and write that down. There's no judgment here. So take that worksheet and start filling in all of the different pieces that Brad gave to you. Okay, so he gave you the Frankenstack worksheet. We've got the reporting for the eyes, the communication. What tools do you use for communications? Is it email? Is it Slack? Is it something else? Write down what you're using for data communication.
And if you weren't able to print out the worksheet, I would just do this on list form on any piece of paper in front of you or on your computer, just by these categories, right? Like start listing out those different body zones, those zones of the Frankenstack. And this is the start of the work for yourself to really identify your tools and start to get to a cleaner stack.
So, what are you using for payments? What are you using for communications? What tools are you using for data and forms? Cool. Gail says that emails come up for all 6 parts.
You're not alone.
We see that a lot. All right. So, my question now is, where does your work overlap? I want you to circle anything that has the same information in more than one place. All right. These are the places where your time quietly leaks out of your week and makes you a lot more susceptible to errors. So, just to be clear, you don't have to fix anything yet. We're not solving anything. We're just noticing it. So, go ahead and take another moment to find out where information is being duplicated. Where does your work overlap? Where are you putting in the same info in different spots? Where are you copying information from one place to another? And now here's a question that's probably going to make poor Gail faint. My last question. This is important. Put a star next to the system or the person that would make you panic if it disappeared tomorrow. So if you're relying on email for the bulk of your tools and that went out yesterday and that went out tomorrow, okay? Go ahead and take a moment to do that. I needed to be on a Zoom yesterday. Fortunately, another one of my coaches was on, but I was unable to get in. And after doing a quick search, Zoom was having problems with their servers in my area. And I'm like, oh my God, if Zoom went out for more than a day and a half, I'd be hosed. All right. So, what you're holding right now after those 3 questions isn't a blueprint of failure. It's a snapshot. It's just a clear picture of where you are right now. And that's exactly what we need in order to move forward. So let's have Brad take those bits of pieces that you collected and actually interpret them for you. There we go.
All right. Thank you, Nick. So take your worksheet or your notes or whatever you've been working on, just sit that to the side. We are going to come back to that. So don't throw it in the shredder yet, So hold on to it there. What we're going to do is now that you've started to identify the tools of your monster, let's talk about some of the common red flags when it comes to the processes and procedures. And sometimes they're easy to jump out, but we're gonna highlight some of them. And this is where your systems may be broken or need attention. I like to think of these as the nightmares within your business. So I'll read the first example here, and then you can read on your own. Duplicate data entry or capturing information in more than one spot. It's a common red flag. Why is it a common red flag? Well, you're going to end up with conflicting or inaccurate versions of data out there because most likely the people aren't entering the exact same information all the time, or you could just end up with some data error out there. So that's a real important red flag. So take a look at this list and see if any of the processes or procedures on the left sound familiar to you. And then look over to the right and just make sure you can understand why these can be problematic. Specifically, think about a time when you've dealt with conflicting or lost information or inaccessible data that was sitting in someone else's inbox if you're relying on email, right? And the impact that had on you or had on the trip or even the business as a whole. And that could even be it was sitting in your inbox, but you weren't supposed to be working or you were ill and you still had to find a way to get that information to another person. So what are those different ways that those systems has impacted you or the whole business? And I'll give you a minute to think about these procedures and personal situations you can reflect on from your own experience. So we'll just take a few minutes or take a few seconds here, maybe 30 seconds for you to think about where are some of those procedures and policy or processes that are red flags in your organization? You can make a note of them if you'd like, or just, just think about them. All right. Nick, we'll jump to the next slide here. So back to Minty here, thinking about these impacts and outcomes that can result from broken systems. I want you to think about your own processes and share which pain points hit you the hardest right now in your business. You can select as many that resonate with you, and we'll just see what all pops up from this audience as far as what are some of the impacts or the pain points that are hitting you hardest. Is it that duplicate data entry, lost information or lost forms? That one person who is the system, and if they disappeared, what would happen? Give it.
Conflicting records is always scary for me.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Well, it's good to see some results. And if you're open to it, we won't call on you and make you tell a story. But if it's something else and it's something else that's on your mind, you want to drop it in the chat. We'd actually love to hear what else it is because we can't have a comprehensive list. So we always love to hear what the other things are that are out there that folks are dealing with. Excellent. So as you can see, you're not alone. Whether you answered these things or not, you're not alone. There's multiple people in the room that are also dealing with similar challenges. So I'm going to pass things back to Nick to help us understand how to start taming our Frankenstack. We've started to put it together. You've started to piece, write down on your worksheet there your Frankenstack, and Nick's going to help us start to tame that thing down.
Cool. All right. So up to this point, we've been really good at diagnosing the problem. We've named the monster, we've seen where it hurts, and we've been honest about why it's exhausting. And now comes the part that everybody worries about. What do I actually do about this? So, what I want to do is be clear about something before we go any further. Again, we're not going to start shopping for tools. I know we all like to just throw money at a solution and buy platforms and softwares and shiny new systems. That's not what we're here for today. This is where we decide how we want our work and our weeks to feel. Because if you skip this part, you're just going to rebuild a system with the same stress as before inside of a different tool. So, what you're going to see are not features, but they're software requirements. These are the five requirements, the five principles that we're going to go over. And the reason that matters is that you can apply these no matter what tools you have, what system you have, whether it's YouLi or whatever system you're currently using. All right. If your Frankenstack is held together with duct tape, if you apply these five principles, they're going to travel with you, they're going to work. All right. So let's go over each of these. Number one source of truth. If you remember nothing else today, remember this one. You need one place where the traveler data is correct, not the prettiest, not the newest, the one source of truth that you can trust. This is the difference between answering a question for a customer in 10 seconds and spending 15 minutes checking three different places to figure out which one of those answers is right. That energy is where your that difference is where your energy goes to die. So principle 1 is one source of truth. Principle number 2, capture once, reuse that information everywhere. Every time someone types in the same information twice, you pay for it. You pay for it in time, you pay for it in errors, and eventually you pay in frustration. This is how simple admin quietly turns into late nights with that low level feeling of always being behind. So, principle 2 is capture the information once and use it everywhere. Principle number 3, automate reminders. Most follow ups don't need a human brain attached to them, they just need an alarm clock. Every reminder that you can automate is one less thing that you're carrying in your head. And that mental load adds up faster than people realize. So, again, Principle three, automate reminders. Principle number four, centralized communication. When communication lives in five different inboxes and two different chat threads, nobody feels confident about anything. People start double checking and forwarding messages such as, "Did you see this?" And this is where staff burnout quietly shows up, not in big explosions, just constant low grade tension. So, number four, centralized communication. And then number five, visibility. Visibility isn't about control, it's about not being surprised, knowing when something is late, knowing when something is missing, knowing when someone needs help, because surprises can be expensive. They cost time, trust, and emotional energy with your customer. And none of this that we've mentioned is about working harder. You already work plenty hard enough. This is about removing friction little by little. And when you do that, change doesn't happen all at once, but it happens in ways that you can actually start feeling week to week, right? Brad, why don't you take that concept and take it to the next level? Go for it.
All right. Thanks, Nick. So turn back to those worksheets there. If you've got your notes or your worksheet there, I want you to grab those things and get them back in front of you because we're going to put our attention back to what you've already started to build out. Looking at your monster, I'd like you to begin to think about what areas are the most inflamed. And before you mark anything, take a moment to think about inflamed, meaning specifically expensive in the following ways. They're expensive in time, risk exposure, traveler experience, and team burnout. So those are the inflammation or expenses that we want to think about. Now I want you to mark your top three inflamed areas on your worksheet. So that's going to be, which different areas with a currency symbol. So a dollar sign or currency symbol to your region. And just put that symbol next to the category, such as communication or traveler profile. So I may have a dollar symbol next to my communication category. So take your top three, put a little currency sign next to them. I'll give you about 10 seconds to do that. You're going to end up with currency signs and stars and circles. It's going to be, quite the artistic piece there you have on your worksheet. So next to the dollar sign, I also want you to label what the appropriate inflammation is. So is it inflamed due to time, risk, traveler experience, burnout? Like what's making that area inflamed? Why is communication inflamed? And why is it expensive? You may have multiple expenses or inflammations next to a single category. So it could be time and team burnout because those things if something's taking a lot of time and it's not efficient, that can burn staff out, right? So if there's a process there, you may have multiple descriptions next to the currency sign. So take a look at that. Go ahead and write next to your currency sign those inflammations of time, risk, traveler experience, or burnout. And this could be your own burnout. That's okay. All right. So looking at those inflammation descriptions, I now want you to identify which is your number one issue. And I want you to write that expense up at the top of the page. So is your biggest expense time? Is it risk exposure, traveler experience, team burnout? What is the biggest expense issue that you need to address? And that could be the one that shows up the most. And it may not be. You may have something else showing up more than one time on the worksheet, but you know that this is the biggest issue. So it's not necessarily what's showing up the most times, although that often coordinates. All, all right. So next slide here, Nick. So I want you to jump back on Minty for us, a little bit more engagement here. Share your number one inflammation with us, if you don't mind sharing, you know, which one is eating you up. And Gail, I agree with the comments. You can actually absolutely have one lead into the other. burnout affects the traveler experience. 100%. Time can affect burnout. Risk can affect traveler experience. These can all be connected. Absolutely, for sure. So give another minute to see if anybody else can get into the Minty and share their most common issue. And we appreciate you all doing this Minty with us, especially on this, yeah, teen burnout, pretty common one. Um, so it looks like we got a couple on time and then a teen burnout. So very common ones there. And appreciate you all doing this with a small group too, because I know it's a little different doing the Minty with a small group. So we appreciate that. It's great to see. Excellent. Well, now that we've identified some of those areas that need attention, I'm going to pass it back to Nick again here. He's going to talk about a plan to address some of these concerns with your Frankenstein.
Yeah, let's come up with a 30-day plan now. So I'm going to say this out loud because a lot of people in this room need to hear it. You do not need a perfect system in 30 days. You just need to do one thing better. That's all I want you to focus on is just doing one thing better. So this is not a big transformation plan. It's just a relief plan. 30 days is going to be enough time for you to map one workflow, remove one duplicate step, and stop one recurring headache. It's enough time to feel less behind. And once that one thing gets better, then the next thing gets easier to see, and it's easier to name and easier to fix. So let's talk about what the first win should look like. All right. This is where we're going to turn insight into something that actually changes week by week. Week one is simple. You're going to pick a workflow, not your entire program, not all of your trips, not everything that's broken, just one thing. What is it? Registration, payments, forms, communications. Pick the one where you've got the most friction going on. All right. That's the one that we're going to focus on. All right. That's the one that makes you sigh a little when you think about it. The one that's going to be the most important one. All right. So, our goal this first week is not to fix it. The goal is just to see it clearly from start to finish, every handoff, every tool that you're using. Okay. Every place where the information is being copied, delayed, or lost. Again, this isn't a transformation plan. What you're doing is just looking at the workflow clearly, and everything else will get easier to name and prioritize and eventually improve. All right. So, week one, you're just going to map the workflow of one piece. Week two is where you decide where the truth lives. All right. One place where the traveler data is actually correct. And let's be really clear when what I mean about this. It doesn't mean that you're going to move everything. It doesn't mean that you're going to have a big system overhaul. It doesn't mean that there's going to be a big migration project. It simply means that you're going to stop arguing with yourself about which version is real. When everyone on your team knows where the truth lives, something's going to shift. Decisions are going to get made faster. Questions get quieter. And suddenly, hours start coming back to your week. And this is the moment where clarity starts to feel tangible. So, week two, decide where you're going to have the truth live. Week three is where people start to feel a little bit lighter. This is the week where you remove one duplicate step, just one, not the whole system, not every problem that you've ever had, just one. If the same I'm sorry, if the same information keeps getting typed in twice, you're going to pick one place where it belongs and let the other one go. No debating with yourself. No just in case, no backup spreadsheet tucked away in a folder called finals, final. This is going to feel like immediate relief. All right. Because every duplicate step that you remove is one less place that can be broken or get lost or create confusion. And once that one thing disappears, you start noticing how much else doesn't actually need to be in there either. So remove one duplicate step. And then in week four, this is the week where we stop trying to remember everything ourselves. Week four is about automating a reminder, just one. Maybe it's a medical form or a final payment or a departure information. Anything that's currently living in your head or on a sticky note or in a calendar that only one person on your team ever looks at. Every reminder that you automate is one less thing that you're carrying around with you. It's one less follow up to track. It's one less late night email that you forgot to send. It's one less, oh my God, here's the Zoom link that we forgot to send out. Okay. It's one less thing that wakes you up at 2 in the morning because you're not sure if somebody submitted the form. And when your form starts remembering for you, something shifts. You get attention back. That's the difference between managing chaos and actually running a program. All right. Now, I know some of you are going to take this, sit down with your team and work through it. And that's awesome, truly. And then some of you are going to look at the thing that you chose and realize that you really want a second set of eyes on it. And not because you're failing, not because you picked the wrong thing, but because you don't want to do this in isolation. And that's normal. Complex programs don't get clearer by accident. They get clearer when we slow down, name what's wrong, and stop carrying around everything in our heads. So, however you decide that you're going to move forward, whether it's solo or with the team, this is the place to start. And you know where to start now. Okay. So if you take this back to your team, map it out as a team, that's great. If you want a second set of eyes on it to pressure test it, super. All right. What matters most is this: small intentional wins are going to add up faster than people expect. Burnout isn't about effort. You're already working hard. That comes from friction, doing things twice, holding details in your head. That all attributes to that friction. Start removing that friction, even a little at a time, and change is going to start to happen. All right. So, with this, I'm going to hand it back over to Brad, who's going to help us close out and leave you with one final frame to take with you. Brad?
Thanks, Nick. So, just in summary here, you all have done a lot of work on your worksheet. You've taken a lot of notes. There's been a lot of steps, but you also all come from unique businesses and unique situations. So, number one is your tech should serve your business. And that sounds obvious, but sit down and make sure, what purpose is the tech serving? How is it serving the business? Is it doing it effectively? And really thinking about those different pieces. If it's costing you time, if it's increasing risk, impacting your traveler experience, particularly negatively, or burning out your team, you now know it's something to fix and you need to demand from your system that does better. And you can do that. You can sit down and help identify it. Because when you look at that Frankenstack from beginning, it is just a lot to look at. And so now you've kind of narrowed it down and identified some key parts. If you'd like to dig deeper into your Frankenstack, into taming that Frankenstack, I should say, we do offer a tech therapy program, and that's a program where you can dive even deeper into your tech and a path to a healthier stack. So if you're interested, you can simply reply to the email that I sent out with the handout and just share a little more specifics about what you're hoping to accomplish and in with assessing your tech, and we'll get you connected with the best person to help guide you through the tech therapy process. And with that, we'll go to the last slide here. I think we've got a question slide, maybe. Yep. Yeah. If you've got any questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can unmute. We're a small group and ask questions, but we've got just a few more minutes here and would happily answer questions if you've got them. Carol, Gail, or anything else in the last couple minutes?
Hi. Yeah, no, I found that really helpful. Just having to look basically at myself and the team, and it's just really nice step by step approach. It's then just kind of the how is then a bit mind blowing, but like you say, I think baby steps add up, right?
That is it. Yeah. Nick, you may want to elaborate on that. But like I would say what Nick wrapped up with is like you're not going to solve it all in one go, right? And you're going to have to week one, week two, kind of chip away at it. So it is the baby steps. Absolutely.
But I think, where does the truth live in each of all those different parts of the old Frankenstack? I think is very interesting because that's what erodes confidence. And that creates so many questions and doubt and disempowerment. And then that causes me a huge amount of time, being the one supposedly in charge. And even with, standard operating procedures, having done that exercise in the last 6 months, or having had that kind of done for us, that's also a really good exercise in seeing where everything is duplicated.
Oh, I'm sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Because avoiding duplicated information
Talking
is
someone through
critical.
your operating procedures and going, "Yeah, we
Mhm.
do that 3 times." Very interesting. It's just, yeah, finding, yeah, just grasping the solution and biting the bullet as to, where we don't need duplication, I guess.
So what I find interesting, I organize my own retreats and I've been using YouLi for the last 6 years. And when I'm organizing stuff by myself, YouLi is the tool that I use almost exclusively, okay? It organizes everything for me. What I came to realize, I organized a trip with a river cruise company this year. And I said, against my better judgment, I'm going to allow somebody else to take control. So my folks registered with me, but then they also went over to this other company and they had to register with them and go through all that information. And so they're filling out my legal forms and they're reporting to this other person. And the organizer of the river cruise keeps coming back to me, asking me questions. And because our folks are duplicating information in two different places, it's atrocious. It's a mess. And I'm like, I can't wait to go back to just organizing my own stuff. It's just nice to have one source of truth across the board for everything.
Mhm.
So I think that if this were a bigger cruise, I would have had Yuli integrate with their system so that we could have just had one source of truth. So hats off to anybody who's using multiple systems to keep everything in one place.
Yeah. But no, thank you. It's, yeah, a very clear look at things.
And I
Well,
don't think
good.
that most of us think uh, about we just respond to problems. So, like I said before, we slap on a quick solution to patch it so that we can, and then all of a sudden that quick patch becomes our gospel that everybody ends up having to follow. So, start fixing one thing at a time and it'll make sense.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all so much for joining. And again, if you would like to personally dive in deeper, reach out, respond to an email. We can talk to you about what a tech therapy program may look like for you. And if you have questions in Yuli, reach out to us or join a demo, and we'd love to share more with you. And otherwise, we wish you the best of luck on your journey. We're excited you're here and diving into your Frankenstack.